So let's go back to some of the clients that you work with as they go through like a Duval and they start heading towards the senior tour, and your advice and let's find a second career. How does golf course design factor in at this point?
You know, okay, so if you ask me the question, I'll ask the question a different way. If you ask me the question, how is professional golf doing and how is amateur golf doing, it's a completely different answer. Professional golf's still very good. When 2008 happened, a lot of the banks failed, and the fear was a lot of the sponsors on the tour were going to go away. Well, some went away, but a lot of them didn't, and the new sponsors came along. So the economics of professional golf are stronger than ever. Amateur golf's changed dramatically, and golf courses just in the area, country clubs are closing because there's not a lot of new people coming to play golf. So whatever it is, too expensive, too much time, other activities, opportunity costs to do something else. So the fear is the amateur golf is changing. So while golf course design used to be a huge business, it's not that big anymore because they're not building new courses, they're closing courses now. So, you know, getting to your question on, you know, Champions Tour and other income streams, you used to kind of, the path of the career was you can play pretty well through age 42, 43, and then you'd have to wait 6 or 7 years to get on the senior tour, and that was the tough years. That gap's growing. There's so many good young players now that now it's like 40 now, 40, 41, and you're not relevant on the regular tour anymore, and then you have to figure out what to do for 9 years. So you better start investing your money and living off your investments. That's kind of what the plan is now. You have to fill a 10-year gap before you can start the senior tour.
Let's go. Thank you. That's a great answer. Let's go to your client, VJ. We prepped on this. Now, even overseas, where he's so famous, even you know, in Fiji, where he's from, golf course design is not available to him overseas, for example.
You know, it might be the only place. He has an active course going in Malaysia right now. He has an active course going in South Africa. So that might be the only place that is still building. China's still building, their infrastructure is still building. So internationally, and that's why it's so important that sports in general went international. International is where the money is if you're going to build golf courses. So VJ, as an example, he hasn't done a course in the States for 15 years, but he has activity over internationally. So,
is it fair to say each of the big 3, 4, 5, Faldo, let's add VJ, has their own sort of golf course design tricks of the trade, as it were? I mean, Palmer's seem to be easier, Nicklaus's seem to be harder. Does VJ have his own sort of signature design?
You know, that's a good question, and Nicklaus always hit the ball left to right, so all his courses were designed to hit every player to hit it left to right because he wanted it to suit his eye, but it also, that's the way he designed courses. VJ's different. He's not left to right or right to left. He's more aesthetics. He's kind of like, I don't know if it's coming from Fiji or, you know, he likes the bunkering and the shape of the bunkering, and the kind of the layout is important to him. So that's, you know, Tom Fazio might be the greatest designer, modern day designer right now, and he's a landscape at corner to corner kind of guy. So it just makes it very high maintenance going forward for the owner, but they all have their own, you know, criteria and signatures.
I asked your permission ahead of time. It's public. We've been studying the case that VJ has brought against the tour. Say only that what you're comfortable in saying. I'm proud and happy that he's gotten as far as he has, I guess, having worked with you on his accounts. Why don't you bring our students up to date on where the lawsuit is?
Yeah, so I'm not going to hit the legal terms exactly correct, but I think you'll get the gist of what the points I'm trying to make. So VJ, and I guess it's been already a year and a half ago, he talked to Sports Illustrated. I'll give you the fast version. He talked to Sports Illustrated, and they asked him a question. He said, because they said, you're taking this deer antler spray. What do you think it does for you? And VJ, in writing, admitted, hey, I practice a lot. I'm trying to take something to take the inflammation out of my back, my arms. He's just turning 50 years old, so his he's been doing this for a long time. Didn't know it was a banned substance, had no idea. That's his fault, dummy. He shouldn't have done that. So Sports Illustrated prints the article just when Ray Lewis is coming out about taking this deer antler spray. So it's big news. Ray Lewis is playing in the Super Bowl and this comes out. VJ finds this out and he goes to the tour. He goes to the commissioner and he says, hey, I took this. I had no idea it was banned. And the tour, the golfers don't have a union, so they need the tour body to represent them and help them in this situation. And basically the tour said, we don't believe you, we're going to suspend you. And at that point, so they went down that path. VJ appealed. And in the middle of the appeal process, the tour realized that WADA, which is their guidelines, the World Doping Agency, their guidelines that they follow, dropped this deer antler spray. And basically had said for a long time that the amount of this substance you would have to take into your body was so incredible to actually do any benefit that they're dropping it off their list. Anyway, at that point, we were really curious to see what the tour really knew. So all VJ wanted to do was two things. He had to sue the tour because he's trying to help the other players. He sued the tour, so this wouldn't happen to the other players. So he sued the tour. This has been dragged on for a long time. They finally opened up the case in November. A judge heard it, dropped 10 of the charges, but allowed one to go through. And it was an important one because it allowed VJ's team to go into discovery and see what the tour had on other players. It's very well known that there's 3 or 4 other very high-profile players that have been suspended for drug charges that the tour has treated differently. And that's all that VJ's fight is for, is I'm going to fight this, and he's footed all his own legal bills. He's going to fight this because he thinks the tour did him wrong by not helping him, and 2, they've treated him differently than the other players who have also had drug charges. So all we wanted to get was discovery. So that's where we are right now. The tours asked for a lot of information from VJ, a lot of it financial. We've provided it immediately. We in turn have asked for a lot of information from the tour, and they haven't given us anything. So we're in this, we need the judge now to step in and compel them to follow her order. And until then, this thing is going to just continue to be dragged on and go nowhere.
You know, when you have something like that, just don't pick on VJ, does it affect his play? Does it affect his reputation in terms of trying to get other deals?
And that's the other part of the case here, and that's unfortunate in the timing. So the economics of professional golf change dramatically when you're on the regular tour and then when you go to the senior tour. You get paid a lot from endorsers on the regular tour, and it drops off tenfold when you go to the senior tour. VJ was just entering that phase. He was one of the guys I actually thought that could cross over. He could play both tours because he's still incredibly healthy and he's competitive. But yeah, it hurts his economics dramatically by having this come forward. And we have companies on record who said, hey, we're not going to talk to VJ because we're afraid of this. And it certainly, maybe a domino effect, it certainly hurts him emotionally and mentally that this has happened. It's hurt his reputation, and it's hurt him in the eyes of the other players, and that's unfortunate.
Now, going all the way back to things we've talked about, do you recommend prenuptial agreements generally? Let's go all the way back to a Jordan Spieth, who I don't believe is married yet.
Not yet, yeah. It's our duty to actually go to that. You have to advise the client to get a prenuptial. It just seems to me, here's how this goes. If you're 20 and it's your first marriage, you're going to say no. But I'm still going to advise you to do it. If you're 30 and it's your first marriage, you're 50-50 that you might say yes or no. If it's your second marriage, you're going to say yes 100% of the time. So it just depends on where in their life they've been and if they've accumulated wealth. And I mean, Jordan Spieth is an interesting, because he's got a lot of wealth at 20 years old, but I still think when that day comes, he's going to say no. I think this will last forever and go forward.
Last series of questions through all the sports that we explore. Social media, tweeting, Facebook, Instagram have become such an important way in which the athlete communicates with his public or her public. What do you recommend your clients do in that space, Dave, to maximize their exposures but minimize their liabilities?
Yeah, it's interesting now. You can buy insurance. We've just found you can buy insurance for social media damage. So we've got, for people who are active in it, we recommend they buy the insurance, and it's surprisingly not that expensive. Is it going to work when we have to face a claim? I don't know, but it's a whole new world there. Yeah, it's a balance. You got to balance. It can't be a distraction. Tweeting and whatever else you're doing can't be a distraction, but it certainly can enhance your brand awareness and your brand appeal. So you try to get, I guess in life, you're looking for balance in everything between work and family, and you're doing the same thing in your business. You have to find balance, and I think that's what we're trying to get them to get to.
And is it fair to say, going back to Rory, the whole, you must assume that your life is lived in the public eye. I mean, the way he tried, in fact, did cut off his engagement, the whole world knew about it a minute after it happened. Is that what your athletes now have to understand as a reality of the matter?
And again, in business too, if I do something, it's instantaneous how fast word can get around now because of all the social media, but it's more so with these guys in the public eye. Yeah, it's part of, I think now the young kids coming up, they know it, and it's part of their DNA. So it's not as much, the older guys are kind of like trying to adjust to this. The younger guys, I think it's part of their life. They've grown up with it.
Very interesting. We're getting near the end. I did want to just explore all the way back at the beginning. When a client leaves, okay, now you've had a representation agreement, you've had a long relationship, but it gets to the point where God forbid, somebody in your agency now wants to take a client away. How does the commission stream generally flow? I guess I'm getting at Mark Steinberg leaving and going to Excel Sports. Hypothetically, how would those commission streams flow, generally speaking?
So in the old days, the big agency, and I came from IMG, so IMG fought for indefinite income stream if they did the initial deal. And you're making the case of, if you're in a third year of a 5-year Nike deal, IMG's case is, we introduced this company to you, so if you renew this, we want the renewal. The other end of this is, so where the black and white area is usually, in this case, Tiger's agent leaving, I think the agent will gladly allow the cash flow to go back to the big company, the X company, as long as that contract is in existence. But the fight becomes for renewals, and then the question is, do you then just say automatically, well, as the agent, I'm going to go negotiate with another company because then I won't have to pay them? Yeah, but that's not the right answer either. So that's where the gray area becomes, and you might reach a compromise where you pay the big company portions of it back, but it's getting harder and harder and harder for the big companies to win those battles, is the long-term income streams. Short terms, they deserve it and should get it.
And as part of it, not to talk ill of our former employer, the bigger the company, the greater potential for conflict of interest. You have a right-sized company, but we used to get that all the time. Well, why don't you put me into the specialty event? Why did you pick XYZ instead of me to go into the made-for-TV golf event? How do you manage conflict of interest? You have just the right-sized agency for doing that now.
Yeah, it's still an issue, and in theory, you say if I disclose it, then there's no conflict, or at least I've communicated. It's not really the answer. I mean, conflict of interest is a really hard. We always played, when we were on the IMG side, we always said this is a good thing. The phone rings off the hook for Greg Norman. The phone rings off the hook for Tiger Woods. They can't do all the deals. So it filters down to the smaller players. I think that's a true statement. Again, you just have to kind of balance it and be aware of it, and deal with it when it surfaces its head.
That was a great 360 look at the golf industry, beginning, middle, end of a professional golfer's career, both male and female professional golfers, and even a little bit on the amateur side, Dave. Thank you very much for being with us, and best of luck to your great agency. Proud to be associated with you.
Great. It was great to be here.
Thank you.